excited to be here with all of you today and just seeing in the chat where everyone is from. So, hi, Canadians, I'm here too, and hi to our US friends and anyone else around the world. I'm so delighted and grateful to have been invited by the Jen community, and thank you for bringing this topic forward. It is for sure a complex one, and I'm glad you're here. I'm going to provide as much as I can in our time together. And so here we go. Today, I'm going to talk about the top five hiring mistakes that most of us as clinic owners and managers make and what we can do to avoid them. So I have been working as an advisor in the wellness and health industry for 20 years. Previous to that, I worked at a number of universities and also as a facilitator, coach, and consultant. I started out in the hotel industry, luxury hotel industry and restaurants, and went from there. But for the past 20 years, I've been working with many medical aesthetic clinics, optometry, chiro, dentistry, mental health, mental wellness. So I am really delighted to be here. I have personally worked with over close to 400 clinics now, and I have trained thousands. I absolutely want to give you props for all the work you're doing every day. I see you, I hear you, I feel you. And I'm also a former clinic owner. I used to have a clinic with my husband, and that's a different workshop, working with your spouse. And we had 22 team members, and hiring was pretty much a constant. And when I say that, I often wonder, like, what comes up in your mind? Were they hiring all the time because they were doing something wrong, or were they constantly growing? So I invite all questions, all perspectives, and I really hope that you reach out and connect with me through the ways I'm going to share here. We have been using a 3-step process in our work for the past 20 years with all our clients. And very simply, this proven process is to take whichever topic we're working on and focus on it in know yourself, know your goal, and then work to know yourself, know your team, and work towards the goal. And our premise there is that the lens of the leader, the lens of the decision makers in that particular business are the ones that are setting the tone for the team. And that team collectively, whether you're looking at client experience or efficiency or collaboration, will produce and have the biggest impact on the outcomes of your goals. So yourself, team, and goal is how we approach all topics. And our motto is learn it, live it. So throughout this session, particularly at the end, I'm going to share a whole bunch of practical resources with you. I think knowledge sharing is fantastic, but at the end of the day, you want things that you can actually do and implement at your clinic, and that's what we're here for. So stay tuned to the end. I was sharing with Dustin that after this many years in business, we tend to be generous or overly generous in the information that we share with you. And one of the things before this session that I received was over 100 questions that you all had about hiring. So first of all, thank you for the questions. Thank you for taking the time to send them. I wish we had time to answer, over 100 of them. So I've incorporated lots of your questions into the presentation. And then I'll confess that these are some of the best questions that I've received, having done this for so many years on the topic of hiring. So there's going to be some ways at the end that we can connect, because I would love to answer your specific question. Today in our session, in amongst the 5 mistakes, I'm going to be covering how you can screen candidates beyond their resume and beyond all of the nice language that we see on resumes. We're going to talk about how to find the right person for your clinic. We talk about company culture and fit and client experience, and also how to conduct effective interviews that can really help you predict success. And around the interview part, we have a really non-traditional way that we suggest you screen and do interviewing, and I'll be interested to hear your perspectives on it. So here it is. If you're a screenshotter, go right ahead. These are the 5 mistakes. And when I say mistakes, I really want to put that to lessons. These are the 5 lessons that I have learned over 20 plus years in working with clinics like you, and also some of my own lessons that have come from my own errors and mistakes. The first one is having a clinic focused posting. Second one is having too few screening methods. Third is relying mostly on your one-to-one meeting or interview. Fourth one is using what we call skim interview questions. Those are the interview questions you've all been taught. If you did a search, they're the most frequently asked, but they're not the most effective. And then lastly, hiring reactively and not proactively. So let's go through these one by one quickly and leave some time at the end. So the first sort of mistake / lesson is having a clinic focused posting. So I wonder if you would be open to a mindset shift or reframing that hiring is really an attraction exercise. This is about putting something out in the world that attracts the right type of person to want to join your business and contribute to your business. So, I mean, the terms HR hiring is just laden with all kinds of actually like boring bureaucracy. It's laborious, it's expensive, it's time consuming. So your posting is everything. Often, remember how I said we focus on self, team, and goal. So often people are coming to us saying like, our last 2 hires have been disastrous. We're starting to churn through people, etc. We interviewed people, but we didn't find anyone, or we found people, but they weren't exactly what we're looking for. And when we examine how did we get there, what problem are we really solving, right? Understanding that a problem well defined is half solved. What problem are we solving? So we're not actually solving the problem of what I hear a lot, which is no one wants to work anymore. Like, I'm a decent person, I'm a decent employer. Like every entrepreneur, I'm learning as I go, but I can't find good people because nobody wants to work. So toward the end, you're going to have access to a resource sheet. And on that resource sheet is a really interesting article from Inc. magazine that says, this statement and belief myth that nobody wants to work. We make that statement at every generation. And so I would love you to turn it and say, how can I write a posting that looks, sounds, and feels different, that attracts the person that I want to my clinic? So instead of the usual posting that you write, we're a busy clinic of dedicated professionals who want to help people do XYZ, whatever it is, then here's some of the job expectations, here's some of the qualifications, and then, apply here. We want you to be open to a different style. Instead, when you think of hiring as an attraction exercise, you're going to include factors like at, Sunshine Clinic, our core values are. Now, please don't panic, like stay calm if you don't have core values, or you're like, Ildi, if you only knew, I've been trying to figure out what these core values are, if I have the right ones for like 11 years. But for those of you who have it, state them. And I have a huge pet peeve with mission statements and core value. They're so generic, they're very long, they're forgettable. If this isn't you today, try. Our core values lead us to reach as many people as we can to support them with their mental and physical health. And we're looking to expand our team. What about including in your posting a sentence of something that starts with "we believe"? So at Sunshine Clinic, we believe that, or we believe in. So we sort of say in business, people aren't given things to buy, they're given things to buy into. And that statement is certainly true for the hiring or that attraction process. If you know your why and you can articulate it, take a deeper dive into your why in that posting. And then what about "we believe," right? We talked about that. What is it that you actually believe in? One of my favorite things is when you're posting a job, instead of just describing your company, which is an clinic, which is really a cut and paste from your website, think about our goals over the next 8 months is to grow our clinic or scale our clinic, or to develop online resources so that people can access support between appointments at a more accessible price. And so try and get away from the generic, this is our clinic, this is the job, you're going to work in a high-paced environment with a dedicated team. And so the problems that I see in postings is it's massively generic and subjective. So we have a little joke in HR, and we say, talk about it later for interview questions, but that question of, can you perform under pressure? And, the answer is, yeah, I'm not sure I know the lyrics. And so musical reference for those of you who need the point is pressure to me is completely different to pressure or high-paced environment. Growing clinic for me is completely different understanding or meaning. So if by under pressure, I mean like answering 3 busy phone lines, and never letting something go to voicemail or trying to avoid it, if that's pressure to one person, unfortunately, the nature of the question or citing it in a posting often puts it as a negative, and it's really unclear and generic. So avoid what we call replacement thinking. So when I ask you, what are you hiring for? You'll say, well, we're replacing the person at the front desk. No, every single person that you hire is an opportunity to evolve that position. So absolutely start with, okay, Lindsay's left us because she's moving to BC, because why wouldn't you want to? Everyone wants to live there. We're not replacing Lindsay. We are fine to say, here's the things she did in her job. We're perhaps want to have a discussion with Lindsay to say, hey, Lindsay, we're doing up this posting. Would you have a read over it and see, like, does this actually accurately reflect what you're doing? Questions like, what else have we missed? What else had you hoped to be able to do in your work, but you may have not had the time or opportunity? So we like to ask, what are the areas of specialization that I'd welcome in my clinic? And a really common example these days tends to be that when you're hiring an administrative, a client patient service, whether it's white glove or whether it's grassroots and everything in between, you want the people to have core administrative skills, but you would love them to maybe do social media. Maybe they have copywriting skills for your patient newsletters. Maybe they're able to accompany you with client or patient consults. So really think about it. And the other piece of advice I can give you around postings is write the posting for the person you want to attract. So we call it the Mary Poppins list, where in Mary Poppins, the 2 kids came to their parents with a list of who is the ideal nanny and what could she do. So whether you think of that practically, whether you think it answers the job posting algorithm, whether you believe in manifesting, I see so many people settling in the posting by just getting something up on the internet or on their site or social media to say we're hiring, and it's not actually specific to what you want. So my intention is not only to help you attract the person you want, but the job posting is the #1 and first screening tool. It's a massively important screening tool. So an example I will give you is that some people will say, well, we didn't find the people that we wanted. We got a poor group of candidates, like the resumes were just awful, et cetera. Or we interviewed people and we didn't find anyone. And then I find out that you want to be open one Saturday a month, or that from September to the end of November, you are open every other Saturday. And then I look at your posting and there's no mention of that in the posting. And my heart just breaks, mostly for your time and energy and the candidates, because you didn't really outline when you could have, while I'm at home, the candidate in my pajamas at 10 o'clock at night, applying for work and trying to find you in this world. And people are saying, hey, this sounds like a great place to work. Then I go to my interview and you ask me if I'm willing to work Saturdays. Why not just state who you are, or even who you'd like to be, and put that in the posting? So have a candidate focused posting. And if you're not sure about what that candidate voice is, we're going to continue to talk about that throughout, but your staff and team certainly know what that candidate voice is. The second lesson or mistake that I see happening is having too few screening methods. So in this attraction exercise, what you want to do is, through the posting, through all kinds of things, have screening methods so that the people that you invite to spend one-to-one time with you is the absolute best and most respectful use of mutual time. So first screening tool is the job posting. What can you write in there that helps a human being who's at home or waiting in the car for the kids to assess whether they will fit with you or whether you have something to offer them? I had clients in Montreal in the past, in Canada, and there's no parking. So they mentioned there's no parking, or mentioned that you do have plenty of parking. These are the questions that the candidates come up with. Training opportunities, instead of being generic and saying on the posting, lots of training and learning opportunities, why not say 3 times a year Why not say if travel is required or after hours is required? Because I'm finding that people are turning down amazing employers and opportunities to work in clinics like yours because of these small details. And then invisible screening tools, and that is your process. So I want to introduce the concept of really managing the candidate experience and saying, all right, right now we need to hire, or we want to explore the hiring or attraction process. And just like any other project, like installing a new software or experimenting with client emails, you're going to dedicate an amount of time to this. So screening tools can include in your posting or somehow through social media, wherever you're sharing this opportunity, things like follow-up instructions. So when you screen a candidate's resume, and on that resume, you say, wow, this person has a lot of metrics on their resume. So they don't say they in their current job, they answer a phone at a busy clinic. They actually talk about managing 3 phone lines at the same time and priding themselves on, not having a lot of things go to email or responding to all email inquiries, whatever it is. Once you say a yes to that candidate, like, yes, I'd love to talk with you. Yes, I'd love to meet you on the phone or in person or in some other way. Give a follow-up instruction. And if you could, right at the bottom of that, and you can template it in most softwares now, recruitment softwares like Indeed, and say, we'd appreciate your response by Friday at noon, and see what happens. Now, it is completely up to you if you want to screen that candidate in or out according to those instructions. What boggles my mind still is lots of people say, well, you know what, I'm so sorry, I didn't see your message about Friday at noon. I don't check Indeed a lot. I don't check a whole lot. So that tells me more about the question, tell me what makes you interested in this job at our clinic, which is they may not be. They applied for a whole bunch of jobs. But in their friends, what you're going to find is there are people who will follow those instructions to say, please do these following things. Appreciate it if it could be done from that time. And after you've reached a certain part in the screening process, I like to come out of the Indeeds or the job posting platforms and go into email. I just like to see how a person's going to email my clients and my patients if they're going to work in the office. So even things like transitioning to email. You are not invading privacy if you have their consent and ask for their email. I almost can't think of an example where a candidate's been belligerent and abused your email or access to your email, but move them into that platform because you're going to learn a whole lot more by reading their emails, seeing their response times than most of the interview questions that you can ask. Why? Because actions speak louder than words. I really want to stress here, one of the best screening tools still is the phone interview. So please, if you can, don't skip it. Do a resume review, get a second opinion about those resumes if needed. But then the very next best screening tool in terms of where you dedicate your time is actually not in the one-to-one interview. That, I don't know how you're all doing it one-to-one. That's a lot of people to meet with. And I know you tell your office, just book them 15 minutes apart or 20 minutes apart. But the reality is that you're kind and giving people, and that 15 minutes ends up leaking into a different amount of time. So the phone interview, yes, if you're interested, let me know, and I can send you the 4 to 6 questions that we use for phone screening. But why I like it is if I'm hiring someone in my office to answer my phone or speak with my clients or patients, all I want to know is how they sound on the phone. And I know some of you are thinking, well, don't you want to see them? Yeah, you do. But this is a huge time saver to do phone interviews. Okay. And then interview formats. The interview formats that most people use are resume, then a one-to-one, some emailing, and then a one-to-one meeting. And we actually suggest screen the resumes, get a second opinion about those resumes if it makes you feel better. I know, like, one of the problems in our field is feeling very isolated in our work and our decision-making process. So screen the resumes, get a second opinion if needed, do the phone interview, do the phone screen. I promise you they are quick. And also you tend to be very good at them because most people here want to use their time efficiently. phone screening. From that phone screening, we use a group interview method, but not the group interview method you think, one I'm going to show you in a minute. After that group interview, you look at who do you want to meet with one-to-one. And after that one-to-one, we like to suggest this thing right here, which is, would you be open to your final candidates after the one-to-one or on the same day as the one-to-one, spending 15 or 10 minutes observing your front office or observing in some place where they're a bit out of the way, how they interact in the clinic. So they're not actively there, but they're doing like a job shot at shadow or something observational. And this gives the opportunity for reciprocal feedback. So when you sit down with Ashley and say, Ashley, thanks again for coming in. I understand Julie had arranged for you to watch at the front for 10 minutes. Tell me what you saw. What were your impressions? Like any question. There is no right question. You're just trying to get from the candidate, Ashley, what she saw. At the same time, I always liked to ask my clinic staff, oh, tell me how Ashley was. And sometimes they'll say, she stood there and didn't say a word. And other times they will say she didn't say a lot, but she was really pleasant. Other times they'll say, when we weren't answering the phone, she actually asked a couple of questions. And so remember, in that attraction exercise, it's both parties, candidate and employer, who are picking each other. Third one is relying most on the one-to-one interview. And I've touched on this. You tend to screen the resume and then invite them in for one-to-one. I do not know how you are doing that. So I want to introduce a concept. Since the 90s, we've been using a group interview format that when we say group interview, most people think a group of people at the clinic, perhaps owner, manager, even staff person, whichever. So a group of us and one candidate. And yeah, that is group interview. But we use a different kind where we use a group interview with multiple candidates present to screen. You're like, oh my gosh. And the privacy freaks are like, we cannot do that. So here's what we do. We screen the resume, get a second opinion if needed. And then we do the phone screening. And on that phone screening, I absolutely give you my word that even if you never get a question from me, you know how to talk on the phone with people. And you will know in less than 5 minutes whether this is someone you want to meet with or not. Okay. And so when you're on the phone with that person and you say, Linda, I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for answering those questions. It gives me a better sense of your experience. Linda, I wondered if you'd be open to come in and meeting with us in a group interview. Linda will say, of course, because she's excited. And you say, so the interview, great. The interview format that we use is called a group interview. And that means you and other candidates will be present. This is the format that allows us to meet you in sort of a low pressure situation where we can actually spend an hour with you and time with you, which we can't do if we meet with all the great people who applied one-to-one. And she's going to say, great. And you can ask, have you ever done something like this before, or invited to something like this? 99.9% of the population will say no. And then you're going to say, well, there's nothing that you need to do to prepare. You get to decide, friends, if you want to do this group interview. And yes, you can do it for more than one job posting. Maybe you're hiring multiple people. You decide whether it's virtual or whether it's in person. And I will be happy to send you more information if you want on this format. But the general format of the group interview is they arrive, you do some kind of clinic tour. And I don't mean like show them your office or the junk room. I mean, even if you're virtual, most of my clients just with the iPad or phone show the waiting area. But if somebody's coming in, it's nice to just maybe open a treatment room or a meeting room and show them typically what it looks like. Because remember, you're trying to give this person information to also assess, is this the place I want to be, right? They're trying to form a future picture of what it's going to be like to work with you. So welcome, you give a little bit of a tour, you outline the format, and it'll be 1 hour, although it normally doesn't take that long. And you say, first, we're going to start off and we're going to talk with Dave, he's the clinic owner, and we're going to talk with Farzana, she's the clinic manager, and they're going to talk a bit about their roles and our business, our clinic, our patients, our goals. Then we're going to talk about the job and the expectations in the job. And then we're going to ask you to either be in groups. And if you've got lots of people, you do want groups of 4 or 5 or 3. But if you have 6 people show up, do 2 groups of 3. And we'd love to just eavesdrop on a conversation you have so we can hear your answers to 4 questions that we have. And there's nothing you need to write down. There's nothing you need to hand in. We're interested in your thoughts, views, and opinions around these 4 questions. And we'll be walking around or circulating, or here in Zoom, you can use the breakout room feature. And we're just going to be taking some notes. So we'll spend 5 minutes per question. So that'll take us 20 minutes. I'll tell you when it's time to go to the next one. And then after we're done that, you get to do and ask anything. You can ask us any questions that you like about us, the job, the clinic, the business, our industry and field. And then we're going to talk about next steps. And then that's it. We're done. My biggest tip to get the most people available for those interviews is to book them from 5 p.m. after. Okay. The other tip I will tell you completely transparently is the only caution for group interview is if it's for a management position or leadership position, I actually don't recommend a group interview. But why we have used group interviews since the 90s for our clients to find the best fit candidate is because it is so completely unnatural for a candidate to come in and meet with you one-to-one. You're seeing them in their best behavior, but you're not seeing them in their best state. And the best state, if you want to know how I can contribute to your office as a team member, is to actually have me interact with others. And I don't know about you, but whether it's in my business now or my former clinic, all I really care about is how that person interacts with others, their peers, and most importantly, my clients and my patients. So that's the best state, is their natural state. And it's really, really difficult to put people at ease when we're in this artificial harmony, best behavior of one-to-one. So the 4th one is using what we call skim interview questions. And I have a confession here. I was like using a thesaurus to think like, how do I politely, this is the politest thing I could come up with is skim. So it's not your fault around the interview questions that you're asking. You are going by what you were taught, what was modeled, your best guess. But I wanted to almost write that the 4th most common mistake I see is that you're actually getting halfway decent candidates, but the interview questions you're asking them don't answer the questions that you have and what you need to know to appropriately assess. And also, friends, when I ask people, how was that interview? They'll say, well, they just asked kind of the basic questions. But I once heard this saying that the quality of questions you ask like determine the quality of your life. I have professionally and personally come to believe in that. And so what does it say to us when I ask you a question that is super generic that every other person who I've ever interviewed with asks versus something different? And I want to acknowledge here that the sort of inspiration for the format of these questions comes from Marcus Buckingham, which I will make sure is on the resource sheet that you'll be have accessible at the end of this session. And so try questions like, tell me about your best day at work in the last 3 months. And if you want 1 month, it's fine. If they haven't worked in 6 months, it's fine. Like there's no science or methodology in the timing. Okay. What was your worst day at work in the last 3 months? In the last 3 months, what was the best recognition you ever received? Okay. Or if you're hiring, you can say in your entire career, there's a lot of young people out there. What was the best recognition you ever received? Right? Over the past 3 months, what made a difference to how you did your last job or current job and how you felt at work? And they might say, what does that mean? You mean like equipment or technology or like the phones and you can say anything. What impacted you or made a difference in how you did your job, like actually functionally carried it out, or how you felt about doing your job? And then, share an example of an opportunity or something new that you learned. Okay. The reason that we say, tell me about your best day at work. If I asked one of you, tell me about the best day you had at the clinic or in your practice in the last 3 months, interestingly, you'll need to think, but you'll come up with one. If I ask you about your worst day in your clinic or practice in the last 3 months, you'll have an instant answer. But what we are looking for here is instead of saying to someone, tell me what your 3 strengths are, or tell me what your 3 weaknesses are, or areas of improvement, whatever it is. If I say, wow, my best day at work was let me think. Well, in the last 3 months, because I manage 4 phone lines at the front, and we have 3 chiropractors and 3 therapists, and we do mental wellness as well. And it was when everyone was scheduled at the same time, and all 4 phone lines were going, and someone came up to me and said, wow, you managed to answer all those phone lines plus, this in clinic day. And I just, well, why was that so great? Well, I really appreciated getting that feedback from my peers. Well, what kind of feedback do you usually get? And then you're going to ask probing questions about that, or say, well, how was that day different? But if someone says my best day at work was the day when the clinic was kind of slow, and the owner asked me to go, like my boss asked me to go and count the inventory and track it on this Excel spreadsheet, or they asked us to look at how many patients or clients called in but never booked an appointment. So like conversion rates, I just loved that. What did you love about it? I got to work in Excel. It was something different. I got to take a break from the phones. But if you ask someone, what was your worst day at work? And they're like, oh, that's easy. That's the day that my clinic manager came to me and said, can you track all the appointments who called in and with an inquiry but never booked to an appointment? It's this thing they call conversion. I guess the question is, what can you analyze around that person's answer and what they describe is desirable and undesirable in terms of asking versus asking generic questions? The other one that's not on here that I would love you to ask, that we always ask, is simply, tell me about your best boss. Like, who was your best boss, best leader ever? And if they cite someone from when they were 16 and say, oh, that was Jim Wilson when I worked at the pool as a lifeguard, or whether they say, oh, that was Cindy O'Grady from 3 years ago, what do you know to ask? Well, tell me about Cindy, right? Tell me about whomever. And that will tell you, well, oh, I could go to her all the time. She didn't just have an open door policy. Like, I literally could go to her and ask her like 20 questions a day. And if you're like, wow, deep breath, I don't want anyone checking with me 20 times a day, there won't be anything that you can do to upskill that person or help them. That's their preference. They just identified that as their best, most desirable scenario. And the other challenge I give you is, as the person answers, watch their facial expression and body language when they talk about the best boss they ever had or best leader. So these are the types of questions we suggest. A question like, in your current job, in order to have whatever improve, what needs to change? And let them answer versus only screening for technical skills. And the last one I wanted to talk about is hiring reactively and not proactively. So my absolute wish and prayer for all of you is that you don't have to hire often. I find that the topic of hiring is so complex because we think about hiring in the context, not at the beginning when we were all in love with each other and this is going to be great and, we're going to retire together and all the rest of it. But unfortunately, we associate hiring with the end of the last person's work continuum. And in my experience working with so many business owners, clinic owners, unfortunately, when relationships end, even for completely natural, organic reasons, moving, transferring, needing to take care of a loved one, younger or older, when relationships end, they often don't end well. There's some bitterness around entrepreneurs, those of us who think we feel really abandoned when someone leaves for any reason. We might even feel incompetent, just all kinds of feelings and emotions around that. So we're in that mindset and feeling and energy. And oh yeah, now we have to hire someone. So there's this whole energy of something went wrong and now we have to hire. So I don't want you to have to hire because there's turnover. I also want to tell you, don't be afraid of turnover. Another time, maybe we can explore, how are people experiencing their work? Our philosophy that we teach our clients and your team members is that they are, and you are 100% responsible for how you experience your work, your clinic, your team, your patients. So if something's going wrong there, take some time to explore it. So what I want to tell you is that it is okay. It is not a sign that you're churning through staff. It is not a sign that you're not a competent leader or business owner. It is a healthy, I think, and generous mindset that I invite you to explore that says, at our clinic, whether it's 3 people or 30 people, we're always looking for good people. We're always welcoming people that want to talk with us about our business. And so I really want you to think about, how can you, through the lowest effort lift possible, invite people to connect with you around contributing to your business as a team member? And even if you don't have a posting, add a work with us link to your social highlights on your social media. And please ask if you're not sure how to do that. Or I know this is not very fancy or technical advice, but ask a young person, they'll know how to do that in about 3 minutes. You can add a careers tab to your website. Call your web developer or ask your 23-year-old and say, let's have a careers website. It's very good for your search engine optimization or your SEO. So how people find you on the internet. And you don't have to have an open posting. You don't have to be actively hiring. You can have a message on there that says, we love hearing from people who want to contribute to our clinic and serve more people in the same passionate way that we do. At the moment, there's no postings open. When there is a posting open, though, you can put it on there and ask your web person to say, when someone submits a resume or an email, just have it come to my email or your administrative support email and have that open. Personally, I always had the time, even running a business and a clinic, where I loved throughout the year getting people's resumes. And sometimes it broke my heart because we weren't hiring and we got a real Mary Poppins, like a really fantastic person who was the unicorn of, the potential of the person we wanted. But I still met with them and they were flabbergasted. I'm like, come on in, let's spend 10 minutes. I'll give you a tour of the clinic. And we sat and we chatted. And not only did I learn about that candidate, but because we didn't have the pressure of hiring and assessing for the job, it gave us the space to talk as peers about the industry, right? It gave me time to ask, if they took a course, tell me about that course. Do you actually think it prepared you for our field? So I learned so much, and it's another way to keep updated by staying connected with that candidate pool. So really, in hiring, we always say, when you're hiring someone because you're trying to fill a position or you're shorthanded or short-staffed, you tend to look at this process through a lens of need. The other more complex part, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is you tend to also look at it through a lens of mistakes and failures. And so I want to shift that lens to say, what if the lens is always seeking connection and talent? I give you my word that in 20 years, I have never had a client who said, Ildi, we're absolutely overwhelmed by the number of people who applied to off our site or social media. And remember, the site or social media can still connect with your recruitment platform. So wherever you posted that job. But what I would like to do is shift from we're hiring, which is absolutely fine, to send me a picture of your smiling team or your beautiful sunny workspace and say, come work at a space like this. Come join this team. This is what your work day could look like. That's what candidates are looking for. And so I've covered the top 5 mistakes. I want to invite you to use your phone to access this QR code. Our office has created a resource list, and on it are some more interview questions. The article that I mentioned in Inc. magazine, so the truth behind no one wants to work anymore. I think it's about a 2 or 3 minute read, nothing complex, but to say you're not alone. There are lots of good people out there. This is an exercise like everything else in the world where we're trying to find each other, just like it's no accident that you're here. And of course, Destin mentioned that it would be appropriate for us to mention that we do have a hiring course for those of you who say, this is a skill set I want. And we have an amazing course called Hire Right the First Time. It's sort of the ultimate step-by-step toolkit in one, everything from postings to all the interview questions to reference checks. And so if you would like to access those things, please let us know. We have a wait list going for it, as we always do, and we usually offer it in May or June. So if you know or think that you're going to be hiring in the next 6 to 12 months, or if it's just a skill set you're interested in, great. And then, of course, if you would like to talk with me and connect in any way, I am not too busy. I'm not too important. I thrive off supporting and talking with people like you. As I mentioned, I learned so much from hearing your questions. These are the 101 questions that I got, and they're tremendous. I'd love to just spend a little bit of time connecting with you and answering some of these questions, Dustin, if we have time. And I see a lot of people accessing this link. So these links, so I'm going to go back to it for a sec, if that's okay.
Yeah, so we definitely have some time. First of all, thank you. This was such a great session. So I think we had said we were going to go about 45 minutes. So we have a few minutes left in that, but we can definitely go a bit longer. So for anyone that needs to sign out, that's totally fine. And we'll be sending out the recording and resources later today and posting it on our guide as well. But for anyone that wants to stick around and ask a few questions, or we can go through some of the questions that were submitted, please do. And we'll hang out for another 15 minutes or so. I did also, there was a couple of questions around, will the slides be shared? So can we include those in our follow-up email?
I usually don't, but this
Okay.
time I will. I'm like feeling
Yeah.
all the blue heart love in the Jane community.
Yeah, we can include some of the really relevant ones. And then there was another question around the phone. I think you had mentioned phone screen questions. So there's a few people that said they were interested in those as well. I'm not sure if you have a link to that we could share or something like that in the follow-up email as well, but we can find a way to get those to people.
Sure. Can I use my 2 minutes left in the 40?
Oh yeah, you have more than 2 minutes. But yes, use
Can
this
I
last two
answer
minutes
it
for
now?
sure.
Like, I'm so honored that everyone's here and you're interested. And so the phone interview, Dustin, will you be my candidate?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's very nerve-wracking. Yes, I'd love to.
So in email, we've already communicated. I've looked over your resume and somehow I've identified what I call transferable skills. So I'll give you an example of mine. You can give me a thumbs down in the chat if you want to. I won't take it personally, but I've been helping hire for 2 or 3 decades now. I really like to see people who've worked in hospitality and in veterinary clinics that cross over really well in transferable skills to front desks, patient coordinators, client coordinators, white glove service, etc. The good news is so many people are leaving the hospitality industry and looking for other jobs that every single person on this call has something to offer. So I've seen your resume. I love it. So I would email you to say, Dustin, can you please pick from one of these times, or preferably most softwares, especially Indeed, have that where you can set up your schedule so you can pick a time. But we've decided, can we talk Thursday morning at 9, a quick 15-minute chat over the phone, you and I, so that I could learn more about your background. And because I have a few questions as well about your resume. So people, like, don't fake it here. Make sure you actually do have questions. I know you're assessing Destin's voice, etc. And Destin, ideally you would have, don't do it, but your camera off, because we're just hearing voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Destin emails back, sure, 9 o'clock it is. And truly it's 15 minutes. And this is exactly what I say on the phone. Hi, Destin, it's Ildi calling from Results Continuum. I'm calling about the front desk position that you had applied for at Sunshine Clinic, our clinic. Is this still a good time to talk?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Occasionally you're like, there's kids, people are apologetic, like, please be kind,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's happening. So wonderful. So Justin, we were so happy to get your resume. I had a look at it and I had some questions about your experience. Is it okay to ask you a few questions?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'd love to answer some questions.
Awesome. So I see that in the last role that you had, you worked at front desk at the Hyatt Hotel. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great. And what I'm wondering is, can you give me a sense of the pace and volume of how many guest inquiries you handled in that job? Because you said here it was a very busy front desk.
Absolutely. I'm going to make something up here. So the time in the hotel really varied depending on the day of the week and the weekends and sort of seasonal. So it really fluctuated, but it definitely was a busy hotel all the time. Some days busier than others, and sometimes it would be just me, and sometimes I would have my support team as well with me, other members of the front desk staff. So we would split the responsibilities.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned your team and front desk. Was your manager available to you, like within the vicinity of your work area, or was it you and your colleagues?
Again, it depended. So sometimes the manager would be there, and other times we would be on our own, which was really great because we had some autonomy and were able to make decisions on our own. But the manager was always there when we needed to ask questions that we couldn't answer ourselves.
Hey, that's great. And I see before that that you worked at Wendy's.
hmm Yeah, it was my one of my first jobs.
That's amazing. One of my favorite places. And so, can you tell me? I see you had various jobs there. Can you just walk me through the different roles that you had? Destin, don't do it. But she's going to say, yes, I started here, and then because it's Destin, I got promoted here, and I got promoted here. I might have questions about timeline to say, I see on your resume that was over an 8-month course time period. Is that right? Yes, it is. Great. Whatever. Destin, one of the things we're checking with all candidates is between September 1st and November 1st, we're normally open every other Saturday. And I wanted to check with you how that worked with your schedule in life. And then she would answer. But as that's how I start in. Is this a good time? We had a call time set up to chat. Is it still a good time? Can I ask you some questions? And then genuinely ask them questions. I also like to ask about education. I see people took courses, but I like to say, oh, I see you took a course in copywriting. That is so not related to your geography degree. Tell me how that came about. And don't worry, people aren't going to get into an 18-minute story, but you could also say, Justin, tell me about the course. And she might say, it's not really what I thought it was. Tell me more. Or it was excellent. I love it. Well, is that a career goal? How do you see that working into what you want to do in your job? And people answer honestly. She'll say, I have no idea, but I've always been told I'm a great writer, and I took it on my own time through pandemic. And then I asked, did you finish the course? Yeah, I did. Great. So what I'm also doing at the same time, friends, is I'm assessing, how does she respond? How does she sound? And really basic. Could I imagine this person speaking with my clients and patients? Yes. Dustin, that's all the questions that I had. I think there might be an opportunity for us to meet if you're open to it.
I'd love to.
Exactly. So great. So the way that we do our hiring is the next stage is a group interview process. And by group interview, we mean you and other candidates present. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. So there's nothing you need to do or prepare. We already have your resume, but I'm going to just tell you the date and time. So it'll be next Thursday at 5:30 at our office. And there's parking at the back. And with your permission, I wanted to get your email so you can also have my email, and my office will send you all of the details. It'll be from 5 to 6 p.m. And it'll be myself, my clinic manager or colleague, and a few other candidates. Are you able to
Mhm.
join us?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great.
Great. And then I would take your email, and that's it. And I mean, that is really it. Like, we should not be keeping people on the phone for like a long time. Um, and then guess what? The show up rate for group interviews is high. Nowadays, of course, it's lower than it's ever been before, like up to a 10 to 30% no show rate. So I have had clients that have gone from resume screening to group interview, and it's a higher no-show rate. If you do screening of resumes, do a phone interview so you hear it's a live person, okay? And then invite them to the group interview, much higher. And the other really interesting phenomenon that please DM me, text me, email me when it happens to you is after the group interview, your clients are like, your candidates will be like, this was amazing. It was like the best interview experience I've ever had, because they're really sitting and talking with a group of people in their natural state. And Dustin, I just realized that I didn't share the 4 questions, but it'll be in the
hmm
resource as well.
Perfect.
And I just want to say, like, you know how I've been saying throughout, make it your own, you're asking things, but you're also interpreting. My advice is do not mess with these 4 questions. Do not change them. Don't get like super creative. You can try, but everyone comes back to these 4 questions. So they're sitting in their groups, they're sitting in their Zoom screen or breakout rooms. And the first question is, why do you think that someone would use the services at insert name of your practice? Why do you think someone would use our services? The second question is for you. What would be the biggest challenge in this role? And the beauty of this, friends, is you can be hiring for multiple roles at the same time. The third question is, I always joke and say we'll be keeping all the good ideas, but we're always trying to reach more people. So our third question is, how do you think we can reach more people? What promotion and marketing ideas do you have? P.S. We'll be keeping all the good ones. And then the fourth one is a scenario-based one that I'm sure everyone has been in, and it goes like this. You're working closely with a colleague and you are starting to feel like you're carrying the majority of the workload. You talk with them once and it mostly resolves, but after a period of time, you start again to feel like you're doing more of the work. How do you handle this situation? In 30 years, I've never had someone say, could you explain it again? I've never been there. Okay. So, and then those are the 4 questions. I have had a few clients that have had more questions. They add more. And I'm like, why? You already will use your genius human capabilities to listen, observe, get a sense of energy, listen for technical answers. But I will also tell you, like, this could be a whole other session, Justin, is like the top 20 weirdest things I have ever heard in a phone screen interview or group interview. I've had people get into arguments in the past. I've had people say, well, I think your idea has no merit to another person, but those have been rare. They have been rare.
There's a couple of questions for repeating question 2, if you could, Ildi.
Yeah, question 2 is for you. What would be the biggest challenge in this role? Yeah. So one day we'll tell the weird and wonderful stories. But you know what it is? Isn't it amazing? I call it the Big Brother effect, where if we put a camera into your office or family home, you're going to be on your like best behavior for 8 minutes. After that, you're going to deteriorate to your real self. And that's what we want. We don't want like fake, hi, Dustin, I'm Ildi, and I really want to work at your clinic, and I'm sitting up tall and I have good eye contact. And sometimes one of the common questions I get is, what if there was someone in the group interview that was really quiet? And I call that not the Natalie Tanner scenario, because in the 90s, one of the first times I used this group interview process after I learned it was a wonderful, wonderful young woman named Natalie Tanner who barely said anything. And guess what? I was hiring for a career coach, career development position. I wanted a good listener, but I had to use my faculties untrained. And trust me, you have as many or more faculties to go. There's something about Natalie that I really like, that I think people walking into that career center would really say, they'd want to talk with her. And Natalie and I she ended up being a staff member for 3 or 4 years and like one of the best. So I like the process because we don't need to hire all these rock stars, superstars. We get to meet lots of people and see them in their natural state.
That's great. This is so helpful. I think everyone has really enjoyed hearing these questions, and we'll include the four questions in our follow-up content. Was there any other questions? I think we've had a few questions in the chat, but we've answered them. Is there any other last points you want to cover? We've got maybe five more minutes before we'll wrap up. Anything else you wanted to touch on, Ildi, before we sign off?
I would love to have the time and come up with a way to answer these 101 questions. And I'm applauding all of you, even if you're listening to this on replay, because these are stellar ones. The very first question here is, do you have a hiring handout or guide? Yep, it's our Hire Right the First Time course, which if you don't like to show up for like a weekly call, you can do it all self-directed. Listen to this second question. This is just, you're all my favorite. Advice around hiring and adding friends and previous colleagues to management teams. So friends, family, patients, clients, like, should we hire them? And I have to say, this wasn't always true between 2003 and like 2008 and 9, and I don't know what changed. But I actually find for the most part, people have done really well with hiring someone that they already know within their inner network, because we tend to have a better match. The thing that makes my palms sweat about this question is management team. So someone who now has a seat at the table and voice in your business. Like I have a lot of questions about why this person and why now. That's it. I'm literally going to only stop when you cut me off, but
We'll do one more. Let's do one more.
For hiring a co-op student for a 4-month placement. First of all, bravo for supporting young people who want to learn about what you do. And this is my best advice, and I'll give you my second. My best one is form a relationship with the post-secondary institution that is where the posting is from. So let's call it XYZ College. Ask that professor or course instructor if someone from your office can virtually Zoom in, or you can, or physically go and present about your clinic. You are going to get the best of the batch of that class. I know that they want you to fill in the form and look at students. Students kind of flip through the pages and see if they want to do their co-op placement there. If you can't physically go, which I understand, and you can't Zoom in because it may not be appropriate, have on your application a little video that you do informal to say, hi, I'm Ildi. This is what I do. This is what our company does. Here's who we support and here's how. And then say at the end, if you've heard this and this is something you're interested in or that excites you, I would love to hear from you. If you've heard it and it's not quite right for you, then I wish you the best in all of your placements. So getting that right fit, right? Because you don't just want someone to come along who's going to photocopy. And then the other part, I don't have time to answer, but we do have a little outline for how to make the most with co-op students, interns, placements. And I applaud whoever asked this. This is a really important question for our fields.